What's good, guys? So my name's Chris, or Blue Infinity. I've been sample making primarily for a few years now. I've been producing for many more years, and I'm going to break down this sample. It's a really dope psychedelic atmospheric sample, and as I've made samples or loops for quite a few years now, I find myself coming back to this kind of style because I just think there's so much depth and atmosphere and also a lot of versatility. This is a sample that I could hear someone like Future on, but also many others. So I'm going to break down every VST, every plugin that I've used, and go over all the different effects and nuances, and just drop a bunch of gems that you can apply in your sample making to help elevate your melodies. So let's just get straight into it. This is what the intro sounds like. So the first most important thing to note, and I'm sure you're going to hear this a lot, is simplicity. There really aren't a lot of layers to this sample, and I'm going to start by basically excluding one of them here, and I'm going to get into this layer in particular in a second, but it's honestly about 7 tracks in total that make up this entire sample. So I'm going to begin with the main melody, and this was a synth that I used from Omnisphere. I'm going to show you the exact MIDI that I used and just show you exactly what it sounded like at first. So I used this JP08 Jupiter Brass 2 within Omnisphere, and I added some of this shapeless fragments, which is within the stock Logic reverb, but it has all these cool warped effects and textures, which I'd highly recommend. I'll be honest, I didn't know about this until like a couple months ago, and it's such a hidden gem within Logic's stock plugins. I always use the Valhalla Supermassive Reverb, which is a free plugin, by the way. Instead of just using the reverbs within the stock Logic plugin, check out the textures section here, because there are so many gems and it does so much. Just in terms of adding ambience to your sounds, and I just added some delay, and this is what the melody sounded like. And it basically just repeats. So I bounce that out, as I always do, because audio files are easier to manipulate, and I think you get more control, especially if you want to chop them and stuff and really focus on detailed compositions. I generally bounce out all my tracks to audio files. It also tends to take up less CPU and just helps your computer run a bit smoother. So what I did was I chopped it into these quarters here, as you can see, and then I reversed them. And the reason I do this is because if I just reverse the entire thing, then you'd get the front at the back and the back at the front. It just like, it kind of makes your melody not sound the way you'd want it to, or at least progress the way it normally would if you have your starting chords and the turnaround or the ending chords. So chopped in quarters, reversed it, and I just pitched it up 2 semitones. I added some compression, which was this Rev AE compressor. I love the sound of it. I added quite a lot of halftime to it. I added the Pultec EQ, cutting out up to 500 hertz, so really trying to remove the low end, because as you hear in the intro, I have a very thick and like large sounding bass. So that was cut out, and I just reinforced that with another EQ, which is just a fab filter, and it sounds like this. And if I unreverse it, so just adding the plugins and then reversed, it just made a nice kind of textural layer on top of the other main elements. Now the next main element I have here is a phrase. This was taken from my Accents and Phrases kit, Mirage, which I just dropped the other week, and it sounds like this. All I've done is added some delay, and I've just cut out some of the lows, so it goes like this. And then just leaving those spaces. So these spaces, if you can tell with the next layer, kind of just help give it a bit of a call and response, and it just kind of makes the sample like pulsate with those little like synthy arpeggio sounds. So that's that layer. And then the next one is this kalimba, which I actually did record with an actual kalimba. Again, this was a sound that I've recorded and is in my Mirage kit, so the link's just down below if you want to get this exact same phrase, and it sounds like this. And just having this gap here just helps build anticipation and just more impact when that next bar hits. And the reason I've done that is also because one of the next layers that I'm about to show you. But if you want these exact same phrases that I've used here, you can click the link below. It's from my kit Mirage. You'll see it in there. It's all perfectly labeled with the tempo, the key, etc. On to the next sound, we've got the bass, and the synth bass which is this wizardry preset, and it sounds like this. It's from Analog Lab. Who am I kidding? Let me play it in context because that's a lot less boring. But yeah, with the layers above, it sounds like this. And all I did was EQ some of the lows out. It was just a really nice sounding bass as it was. On this bus 8, I've got a little bit of distortion, and bus 11, I've got some chorus, which I generally do this, especially with my basses, where I have that chorus which kind of widens the sound, but then I've got the EQ cutting out the lows, so it's only widening sort of more the mids and the highs. That's also what contributes to this being such a large and atmospheric sounding sample. So coupled with these textures, they sound like this. So that stop just really helps add impact. Now this layer is one that just added so much to the sample if you didn't notice already, and this is the drum or the perk loop. This is from my boy Phantom808. Please do yourself a favor and check out his kits. His Cremona kit especially, which he put out not long ago, has so many amazing loops in it. And it's this drum sample. Now without any plugins, it sounds like this. Keep in mind I've time stretched this, so that's also distorted the sound slightly. But then all I did was just pitched it up 4 semitones, added halftime, which I love to do with drum loops, and just to create drum textures which make more sense in the sample, because the assumption is that you're going to have a producer add drums with like an 808, hi-hats, all that stuff on top. So just something more textural and not taking up lots of space. And then I've added some of the UAD AE compressor, and I love this compressor, especially for percussion. And now it sounds like this. So if you notice on these two turnarounds, basically at the ending points here after the first 4 bars and then the 8 bars, it's this little like drum fill or lick. So just having that cut out lets that drum stand out. So just that hi-hat stomp just has more impact. Again, it's subtle. It's not going to get in the way of a producer adding drums on it, but it's enough to just give it more of a kick and kind of that rhythmic chop to it. And again, obviously I've not cut out entirely, but you can see the synth bass just has this little stop where you see on the waveform, this drum is also doing a lick. So it just accents really nicely, and this leads into the next section. And what I've done here is just take that same MIDI that I used in the Omnisphere preset, and I've used it on this Analog Lab preset. And this was the Ken Kun preset from Max Shooter and Keon's Analog Tools 3 bank. It's an amazing bank. I just love multi-keys if you haven't noticed by now. And real quick, multi-keys basically means that usually one note will cycle through 4 different sounds, so you get really cool textures, and just by combining all these multi-keys rather than just one sound, like one sound of a piano. So it sounds like this. obviously that's very low sounding, so that's where I bounced it out. And then what I did was I pitched it up too, so it matched the project, but then I pitched it up again a full octave. I added some of this RC20, which just gave it a bit more of a vintagey sound, but also keep in mind the width here. I've made it a bit more narrow and mono sounding, so that helps it stand out from, you know, the drums and everything else, which has a very wide kind of stereo sound. So that, and then just cutting out some of the lows for the EQ as I typically do, and it sounds like this. And with the drums. You can hear how it just sounds very kind of a little bit detuned and distorted, and the crackle and everything. It has that nice vintage sound, and I just think it leaves so much space again for drums, for a vocal, and it's something I could hear so many different artists on. Now I'm going to play the last little bit of the sample, but I just want to point out what I think is one of the most integral, most important layers in this sample. And it's this vinyl track. I just got this from Splices, a million different cassette, VHS, vinyl sounds you can get. I tend to use this RC20 plugin, which you'll see me use a lot. And you can obviously get the noise and the vinyl sounds here. But I think just having a specific vinyl track or ambience, even if it's just outdoor nature sounds, adds so much depth to your samples. And the difference here, try and pay attention here. You can tell I've turned it down a lot, but I'm going to turn it up a little bit just so you really notice the difference without and then with. So here's without. And now with. I'm telling you, if you have a spacious sample, something that isn't like crazy synths and hyperpop, just adding little ambient tracks like this will add so much more depth to your sample. So definitely give that a go. And it can be so much fun because you can mess around with bird noises, water sounds, people talking, walking, like any kind of sound can just bring life to your samples and your melodies instead of just being a synth loop that plays over and over again. Adding that ambience makes a difference, and you can get crazy with it. Obviously I even EQ'd it just so it kind of sat nicely in the high end, because the Multikeys is more mid focused and the drums also kind of the mids, a little bit of the highs. This just shines more because it takes up that high end frequency. And you can even do things like, you know, take an ambient sound and make it rhythmic. There's no limits with what you can do. You can obviously just have a track of ambience in the background, but you can also start adding effects to it, make it pulsate, make it have a rhythm, all sorts of things. So that's what I did there. And then leading into what is basically the last section. Sound is doing. So yeah, this last layer was another Analog Lab preset, and this was the Captions preset, also from Analog Tools 3 by Max Shooter and Keon. And I just have this super simple pattern, and this is what it sounds like without any plugins. So you can hear how it's cycling through different sounds. That's basically what multi-keys are. And what I did was added some compression. I added this Valhalla Supermassive reverb, so this is what it already sounds like. Just a bit more spacious. I've got this EQ, I've got some delay, now it's even more spacious sounding. And I've got this Portal preset, which is the rhythmic octaves preset, and just a bit of a lower mix, but it's starting to add more artifacts, so check this out. making it a bit glitchy sounding. And then I've got the fourth shape pan just to help give it some rhythm, and it's just panning a little bit as well. So I bounce that out, and you can hear a lot of this vinyl static noise. This is from the RC20 this time, and with the high mix, and again just giving it that vintage feeling, that kind of imperfect sound and quality, and I just love that. And it's obviously super common in a lot of high-end, high-quality samples these days. So yeah, that's kind of and then it's just the same layers as before, just in different arrangements, and that just gives the producer that uses this loop or sample different options to play around with and just flip it in different ways. But that is pretty much the sample. It's simple and it utilizes rhythm, it focuses on ambience and static, and I think it's just honestly about the use of sound selection, keeping it simple. A lot of these sounds are very just textural, and the melody comes from these multi-keys, which gives it a lot of different texture as well. But again, keeping a lot of space, and because there's a lot of space, something like this synth bass, it can just be large and just big sounding and take up a lot of space, and it just gives it so much more atmosphere. So I really love these kind of psychedelic ambient samples. There's so many different ways this could be flipped, and on the master I've pitched it back down to, added a bit of multi-band compression, really boosting those highs. And I think because I compressed these highs, that also accentuated a lot of that vinyl static sound, which was also in the high end. So I think that's really nice, especially because it's such a subby, beefy sounding synth bass. It's, you know, that's a pretty strong low end as it is, so just wanted to make sure I was boosting those highs as well. And you can see here on the EQ on the master, I've also just boosted the sides, which is just making it sound even wider and more stereo sounding. I've got my classic ARTG preset, and I just love this thing just for like some of the final touches. Boosting some of the input a little bit, so just making it louder and putting a limiter, making sure it just doesn't cut past minus 0.2. So if you want to get half the phrases and textures that I used in this sample, then the link's just down below. That kit is called Mirage. Just dropped it, and it's full of amazing phrases just like this. You can easily drag and drop into your projects and just flip them in any way you like I did. There's a million different ways to flip them, so all perfectly labeled with tempo, key, all that good stuff. And yeah, I'm really happy with how this one turned out. If you want to see more videos like this, just subscribe to see more, and until then, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.